What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back with another video. Today we are watching 90s flashback. Do you remember these things? As a person who grew up in the 90s, I absolutely love that time period. It is a whole different lifestyle, whole different vibe of what 2023, 2024 is. It was like a lifetime ago. But we're going to look at this, we're going to react to this, and I'm going to see how much of this I remember, because the older you get, the less you remember.
A lot of us have seen the 90s. It was a good time with many new things coming and changing
Hell
the way
yeah.
we lived. But of course, as always is the case, the good times don't really last all that long. But there are still many memories.
Oh god.
So let's take
Oh god, I remember those cameras. Because that was before like the cell phones and whatnot. You had those big, chunky, clunky ones you put on like your shoulder and stuff. Oh my god. That's one thing I don't miss from that era.
a look at some of the things from the 90s that aren't around anymore.
Oh, and that computer. That's definitely dated.
Number 23, floppy disks.
Oh god.
1.44 megabytes of data.
Yeah, I remember these. So there'd be a little slot you put into your computer. It was almost like memory cards now. Or flash drives, if you will. You use it there, but it was like less than a gigabyte. It was like 300 megabytes maximum. And that was a big selling point too. Because people would go out, oh my god, look at all that space. And damn. That is...
Data does not
that is a
sound like
throwback.
much these days. But in the 90s, that was a
Yeah,
whole lot of
1.44
space.
megabytes.
And so were the floppy disks, which revolutionized the way we shared data. But there was more to it.
That's how the games
Pulling
came too.
back on the metal slider head and hearing its cracking sound was a guilty pleasure many of us enjoyed. Not to mention the number of jokes that it gave us unintentionally through the name itself. Number 22, videotapes.
Oh.
There was something special about lining up in stores to get the tapes of the
Yeah.
latest movies and cartoons.
Yeah, VHS was quite a thing. Because I remember going to Blockbuster and renting like movies and stuff and games. Especially the movies. Because you could get it right after a huge douchebag rented it. Because with those ones, you have to rewind them. You have to manually rewind the tapes. So they would intentionally leave it at the biggest spoiler in the movie. So the next person, when they get it, all of a sudden they're spoiled of the movie. And then eventually at the end of Blockbuster, when they were going out of business around that era, they would start charging you. If you didn't rewind that tape, we're charging you between $1 and $5. And would go onto your account. So next time you would go to rent a movie or a game, you would have to pay for the movie or game plus an extra $5. That's where the slogan, "Be kind, rewind" comes in.
From kids to grown-ups, getting a tape was a big deal. Friends and family would
Yeah,
gather
a lot of those
together to
VHS
watch
tapes
them,
are
and
worth
every so
money
often,
now, like
it would
real
get all
money.
wound up in the player. But that aside, they were always a great experience.
Yeah, and the thing is, so they're only publicly available, so there was no internet, there was no way to download them or stream them, there was no Netflix or anything like that. So what Disney would do back in the day is they would have something called the Disney Vault. So let's say you want to pick up, I don't know, Beauty and the Beast. So you'd have a certain amount of time where you can buy that VHS. If you didn't buy within that time frame of when they had it, it would go into what's called the Disney Vault, and they would lock it up and not sell it. So they would hype it up as down the line, we're releasing the Disney Vault. Come buy the new movies again. And then you would have another limited time window. So if you didn't buy that, you would have to wait till whenever they released it again. It's a crazy period.
Experience.
One thing I don't like about
Number
the
21,
90s.
8-bit video games.
Oh god.
Donkey Kong, Super Mario, Contra, and many more are things that may be still around today.
Yeah, because that was the era where it kind of was the crossover between arcade and NES and Master System and whatnot. Because I remember there were some that were in the arcade that got ported to the NES, and it was a really bad port. Some were okay, like Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles 2 and 3, amazing. Because the arcade game, Ninja Turtles, was actually Ninja Turtles 2 on NES. Obviously, on the arcade, there's certain audio stuff they couldn't do on the NES. Certain visual things they couldn't do on the NES. So sometimes the arcade versions would be superior to the NES. And yeah, I remember playing like Castlevania and Ninja Turtles and Mario Bros. All those classics, Metroid. But yeah, there were some BS ones too, like Silver Surfer, Fester's Quest. There are so many where it's like, dude, come on. It doesn't have to be this hard and complicated.
But the real pleasure of playing them was
Oh,
on a
look at
gaming
Game Boy.
console with cartridges. The best part was that if there were any glitches,
Oh,
all
that's
you would have to do
Broforce.
was take out the cartridge and give it a nice blow.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. So when they had this era of gaming for the NES, and even up to PS3, so anything below PS3, what you got on the cartridge, that's the game. There's no patches, there's no updates, there's nothing like that. They might reissue new cartridges down the line, but if there's a game-breaking bug or something, you have to deal with it. Or you have to go to the store and talk to them. Because, yeah, there are some BS game glitches on there. And sometimes you'd be getting in the middle of the game, you'd be playing for hours, and you'd come into a glitch. And it would ruin everything and stop you. And you'd have to take the game out. And a lot of the games you couldn't save. So once you take that cartridge out of the NES, boom, you have to start all over again. And then a lot of people would blow into the bottom of it to clear it out, which was a really bad thing to do. You had to get like a Q-tip and like some cleaning solution and do that. Because sometimes when you blow in the bottom of it, it actually ruins the cartridge even more. But yeah, that was a good and bad period for video games.
Problem solved. While there's no doubt that PlayStations and Xboxes are still fun, they lack the old world charm of a Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Number
Super Nintendo's
20,
my jam.
Walkman.
Oh,
Cool
God.
got a new definition with the invention of the Walkman from Sony. It gave everyone so much freedom of being able to walk around with their music.
Yeah, so there's two different versions of this. So there's this one with the cassette tape. So same thing as the VHS. You'd have to rewind it and fast forward and stuff like that. Then there was the CD-based Walkman, where it revolutionized everything. You put your CD in there, you play it, you can skip tracks, you don't have to rewind it. I hated rewinding cassette tapes, especially because the film on the inside is so flimsy. It could rip or tear or damage, and then it's gone. You can't use it anymore.
It was hard to spot a kid without a Walkman in the 90s. Sharing cassettes and headphones were the only reason to have friends back then. Number 19, Discman.
Oh,
Of
this is
course,
what I was
the
talking
Walkman
about.
was slowly phased out as CDs became more popular.
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about. Instead of the cassette, you have your CD. Then you see you got your last track, next track, stop, play, pause. These were great, but sometimes they would skip, so you have to like give it a hit. And that usually fixed it too.
It could hold more songs, was much more portable, and even the quality was better. So, of course, the Discman was the next logical step after the Walkman, and it taught many of us the
love
value of
these.
not being too
I used to
restless,
listen to it,
as even the smallest
in the
movements
car
could
and
lead
on
to
the way to
skipping.
school.
Still, they were a great way to rock out to music. Number 18, dial-up modems.
Oh my god.
As you're watching this video,
Yeah, so with this one here, this is before broadband and all the other stuff, so you would actually have to connect on your phone line to the computer, and you'd hear that dial-up sound like and then you hear like almost like a robot dying. It's like this weird sounds coming from it. The other thing too is because it's on a phone line, let's say you get connected to the internet, you're on there, you're surfing the web and stuff, and then someone goes to make a phone call, you get kicked off because it's all on one line. That was a crazy time. I'm so glad we're over that. We have better internet with this. My god, that was a hassle too.
you probably don't even realize how much the internet has improved over the years. Many of us have spent time sitting
Listen
in
to
front of
that
a
robot
computer
dying.
and waiting for the dial-up modem to connect us to the internet.
Yeah.
And they
Sometimes it
sure
takes like 10
did
minutes.
take their own time, but once connected, they gave us access to a whole new world, which was unheard of at that time. Number 17, Pokemon Camera.
I have
Before the
nothing to
hunt
say
for
about this.
Pokemons actually began in real life, there were these bright little cameras that were
Yeah,
around in the
I
90s, which would superimpose.
Yeah, Pokemon was like after my time in the 90s, because I was growing up, becoming a young adult at that time. So I never got into Pokemon, even like the games, like Pokemon Snap and Arena and all that. I never got into that.
Random Pokemons on all the pictures. It was a pretty good way to spend an afternoon with the kids, making them wonder where all those Pokemons came from. Number 16, typewriter. These were the ultimate tool, whether you worked.
So, I don't know how it was across the country or the world, but my I would say my second year in school was actually the last year they used typewriters, which was an absolute weird experience because you have to type the letters on there, and as it does that, it's gonna move the top part. See where the top part is? It moves to the right, and then when you're done, you have to move it back to the left so you start a new sentence, and then the paper would be connected to the back of that. Not gonna lie, it sucked ass. I hated that. I'm so glad we have computers now.
In an office or you were an author. There was something oddly satisfying about the keys hitting the paper, and you could never be enamored enough with those few people who could type at insane speeds. There was just something magical about those people.
No, it sucked ass.
Not
That's
to
what
mention
it
the
did.
little whirring sound as you push the paper back for the next line. Number 15, pagers.
Oh god.
Before the advent of mobile.
Yeah, so with these ones, the pagers was not a phone. Basically, what would happen is you'd have the pager number, and someone would send almost like a text message to that pager saying, "Oh, call me," or this or that. They'll leave a message on there, and then once you have that message on your pager number, you go to a phone booth, and then you call that number and then talk to them. It was so complicated. It was almost like you have a text message phone, but then you need another phone to call them. It was a weird scenario.
Phones, getting hold of people was actually a huge task. You would either have to call them on a landline or fix a time to meet. And if by any chance there was a sudden change in plans, all you could do was hope the others weren't offended.
Yeah, because there was no cell phones
then
at the
came
time.
along the pager,
So you couldn't
which could
call
be
or
carried
text
around
people.
and could get messages. It was a great step towards communicating with one another, and was a very handy thing to have around. Before WhatsApp, of course. Number 14, digital diary.
I
While it was
don't
not
remember
possible
this at
for
all.
everyone to afford a secretary, and carrying around a notepad wasn't really in good fashion, there was the digital diary which you could keep. These nifty little things could hold everything from your appointments, to-do lists, and even let you make notes. And while smartphones
I
have
remember
actually
that.
made it redundant, it was all the rage back in.
There was also what was called these sidekicks. So it'd be like this, but it would also be a phone. I think that, yeah, this is probably after this came out. But yeah, you would have your, almost like a text message, you text people and stuff. And then the phone, you would physically change it into like a cellular phone so you could actually call people.
The 90s. Number 13, light up yo-yos. Nowadays,
never got
kids
into
are
the
into
yo-yo
digital
stuff.
things like phones and console games. But there was a time when a walk
I was
around the
also
neighborhood was
clumsy
one of
and
the best things to do.
Me throwing
Of course,
something around, probably not
swag
the
was
best
still
idea.
important back then, which meant you could see many kids with a
remember
light-up
people
yo-yo.
did the walk
If
the
you
dog
could
trick
master
and
the
stuff.
yo-yo, you were undoubtedly cool. And if you happened to have a flashing one which could make nights more interesting, you were definitely the king of swag.
Oh my god,
Number
the king
12,
of swag.
flip phones. These babies were all the rage back in the day.
Oh yeah.
It looked uber cool to take.
Yeah, if you ever watch any comedy or action movie from the 90s, you're going to see a flip phone like this. They were really cool though. I will admit that I did like my first phone was a flip phone. Now, there was two different styles. So there's the flip phone with the antenna, you roll it up, and then there's one without it, which is built into it. I had the one that was built into it. But yeah, I remember my uncle got a flip phone that had email on it. And he was so excited. He thought he was like a big man. It's like, oh, let me check my email. And then he would go on his phone. Oh, what a time. What
Got a
time.
phone, flip it open, and then talk. But it did come with its drawbacks though, as these phones were extremely vulnerable to breaking.
Yeah.
Sadly, with the advent of touchscreen phones, no one really remembers these flip ones anymore.
They're actually starting to come back though.
Number 11, answering machines.
Oh god.
Whenever you're not able
This was a time in all eras. So basically what would happen is, so you know how you have your phone now, you call it, nobody picks up, and you leave a voice message. So back in the day in the 90s, you would call somebody and it would reach their landline. However, landlines can't have voice messages. So what you would do is you could take this big machine and would hook up to your telephone. And when you didn't pick up after a certain amount of rings, the answer machine would pick up with a voice message saying, "Oh, please leave a message after the beep." And then you leave your message. Now to check your messages though, you don't use the phone. You actually play it off that big machine. And then you can play it, you can delete it, whatever. And I remember a lot of people putting like funny jokes, or you would put like a ringtone almost, like on the answer machine. So you play like a song or something. So answer machine would come on and be like, "Oh, I'm not here right now, but leave a message after the tone." And then a music starts playing and then you hear the beep. It was a fun time. I hated that machine though. I'm so glad we have both of them combined into our modern cell phones.
to receive a call, people can generally leave a message on the voicemail which you can hear later. But no one has seen where these voicemails are actually stored because they are digital. But back in the day,
Yeah, look at that.
there were answering machines which actually recorded
I
the
had
messages.
a much bigger one than that.
And you had to record your own message to let those calling know that you can't attend the phone. Crazy, right?
Oh, and the other thing too, so you would also have to leave your number or how to reach you because there was no caller ID back then as well.
Number 10, smoking ads.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
as kids, there was nothing as remarkable as the
These were all over the place. So even, not only in the 90s, but even go back to like the 50s and 60s when TV really started, you would have cartoon characters do smoking ads on the program. So you'd have, let's say, the Flintstones. You'd have Fred. He would do his usual, cartoon stuff. And then it would go, "Oh, we're going to go to the break." And then they would show Fred smoking a cigarette on his break, saying how cool it was. And like I said before, this is a much different time period. So even in restaurants, you could smoke anywhere. Even any public space you could smoke, but restaurants were quite different. You'd always have like this loud puff air of smoke, and then eventually there was a smoking section, and then there was a non-smoking section. Now the problem is they were right next to each other. So if you go into the non-smoking section, guess where all that cloud of smoke's going to go? Right to the non-smoking section. And then eventually everyone just outlawed smoking in restaurants. Like I said, it was a different time period.
Marlboro Man, or any of the other people in smoking ads of old. Even though all of us knew that at some level smoking was harmful,
Yep.
there were many kids who took up smoking just because of the ads.
Yeah, there was even a mascot they had, I believe his Marlboro, is Joe Camel. I think his name is Joe Camel. But he was like this cool dude who smoked and he promoted it. And you could tell it was aimed at kids.
So I think it was actually the right call to ban smoking ads. Number 9, Macarena.
Oh, God.
If you lived in the 90s and did not
Yeah, this was all over the place. So this was one of the big dance crazes in the 90s. My school actually played this, and people would do it. So it's, you fold your arms and touch your hips and all that, you move around. If you hear the song, you'll know it. But it's one of the things where it took off, and people did their own versions of it, and then it just went away. It was an easy dance to learn too, because it didn't have too much to it. But yeah, it was mega popular.
not know how to
back
do the
then.
Macarena, you were a geek. There was
don't
no
think
other
they
way
did
that you would
anything
not know
other
how
than
to
that,
move
too.
to the beats of this awesome song. And while it may
Hey,
still be a rage at
Macarena.
retro parties, it is sad that most kids today do not know the Macarena.
Macarena.
Number 8, WWF.
Oh, oh, this just unlocked a memory in me. Oh man, I remember these. They were at like the corner store and the grocery store and all that. Oh my god, this
While
is so
playing
good.
cards might still be around, there was no greater
'Cause
fun
it
for
was
a
their
kid in the
version of
90s than
baseball
playing
cards.
trump cards, where they would pit one wrestler against another. It was the simplest of games, and one really great time pass. Oh, and yes, the WWE was WWF back then.
Before
Number 7. TV antennas. If you've looked at old photos of
Oh.
television and see two...
Oh, this is classic. So anyone that has a TV right now probably has cable or just watches TV on the internet or whatever. So back in the day, we had the CRTs, and we had these separate antennas that we put on top of the TV, but you would have to adjust it. So you see like the bars on the screen here? So you'd have to move the two antennas on top, move them around. You have to like shorten them and lengthen them, one shorter than the other. You have to try and find the sweet spot to make the picture look clear. Not only that, so weather also affected it. So let's say you had a storm, it makes it even worse on there. And my god, if you're a kid and you accidentally bump into the TV and you move that antenna, might as well get the shoe out because you're getting your ass beat.
rabbit ears protruding from them, those are basically TV antennas. These were essential for the TV to display
especially if
any
storms
picture,
took this out,
and
it makes
every
it even
house
more
had that
difficult.
one
Or,
person who was designated to
frozen ice.
moving it around till he got the best picture.
Exactly.
It was annoying, but it was a family tradition. But with the advent of digital television, the antennas made an exit.
Well,
Number 6.
that's technically not true because free to use, was it free to air? Yeah, free to air TV still has the antennas, but they're like automatic antennas, so you don't really have to play around with it.
Cordless. Telephones were usually kept in the
Oh,
living
yeah.
room, and many houses did not really have extensions, which meant that if you needed privacy during a phone call, you either had to shoo everyone out of the room or get a really long wire.
Yeah, because I remember this. So typically you'd have it in two spots. You would have it on a table or you have it connected to the wall. And there would be a cord that goes from the handle to the base. And depending on what model you had, they could be shorter or longer than others. So if you had brothers and sisters and you had other people in the house, they could get tangled up in it. You can get tangled up in it. And it's just a hassle. I'm so glad we don't have that wire anymore because my god, I like all this wireless stuff.
But all that changed with the cordless phones, which allowed you to move around freely while talking on the phone. But they've become obsolete since the coming of the mobile phones, and if you ever happen to see one, save it as a treasure. Number 5. Mixtape. Even today, thinking of the perfect gift for the one you love is a difficult...
Oh yeah. I didn't know what they were talking about at first, but now I know. So basically, how do I do this? So let's say you make a Spotify list and you put all the songs you want on there and you make a playlist for somebody on there. So imagine that. So that's very similar to what a mixtape is, but what would happen is you would have a cassette tape or a CD. So on the cassette tape, you have to manually record the song. So you have to play it out, so the audio, and take a tape recorder and actually record the songs. On CD, you can do it on the computer, take whatever songs you want, burn it on the CD. So basically what you would do is, let's say you like somebody, or even if it's for a family member or something, you would make your own cassette or tape with individual precise songs on it and give it to the person as a gift.
thing to do. But in the golden days of the 90s, the solution was pretty simple. A mixtape. What it meant was getting a hold of a blank cassette and recording all the songs that you think express your feelings best and gift it to your girlfriend or boyfriend. And while mixtapes went out with cassettes, you can really kind of do the same thing by making them a
tape or a
playlist.
boner jams
But it
tape.
just isn't the same thing, is it? Number 4. Boy bands. Okay, so while nobody would actually ever admit it today that they loved boy bands, there's no denying that all of us were pretty crazy about them.
Yeah, so this is back in the day. So in like the 90s, it was like masculinity is at its highest. We're like, I'm a manly man. I drink beer and pound tools or whatever. So when, the boy bands came out, 98 Degrees or whatever, New Kids on the Block, People are like, oh, this is so weird. This is so, you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so people would go out there and be like, oh, boy bands, oh, this is so stupid. I'm not watching this. But now people look back and be like, oh, that was pretty cool. That is awesome. And you get like the manly men back then, now, be like singing their songs and know every chorus by word. It's funny how they pretended to not like it at first.
Not only could they sing, but they could also dance and look good while doing it. And their music was the kind of thing that would make you jump on the dance floor straight away. But of course, we can't really admit that we like them, can we? Especially not the guys. Number 3, maps. Okay, to be fair, they're pretty much still around and are still used a good deal. But that is...
So these ones were most annoying thing ever. So nowadays, if you want to look up a map of where to go, whatnot, you go to your phone, you go to Google Maps or whatever method you use. You put in where you're starting, you put your destination, and it automatically tells you where to go. You can track it as you go, so you can see in real time where you are and make sure you're on the right path. So back in the day, you would have to go to the stores and physically buy a map of the location you're in. So let's say you're in Toronto. You go to a store in Toronto, you buy a Toronto map, and then when you open it up, it has the entire city on there. So you have to find out where you're going on the map. You have to find out where you are. And then you have to take a marker and try and find the best route there. And not only that, so when you're driving, you have to make sure you're on the right path. So you got to look at the stop signs. You got to look at the street signs. Make sure you're going the right way. My God, that was horrible, especially if you get lost or you take a wrong direction. Now you have to figure out how to turn around and how to get back on the right path. It was such an annoying feeling.
Is only in places where the internet is not a sure thing. Maps were pretty much a part and parcel of any road trip, and you really could not step out without it. Reading it was not everybody's forte, so there were designated navigationalists. Not like the ones today who just turn up the volume on their phone and let Google Maps do the rest.
Yeah, hey Siri, tell me how to get to
Number
this.
2, LimeWire. While something similar is still around today.
Oh, this takes me back. LimeWire and Napster. Those were the two. And there was some teddy bear thing. But I remember LimeWire and Napster. So this is around the era when downloading things was starting to get more popular. And people started downloading songs and movies and TV shows and all this stuff. And I remember Napster in particular got in trouble. I want to say it's by, what was it, the Metallica, Lars something? I remember he sued Napster and won and forced them to shut down, saying that they're stealing the content, whatnot. Which also, I think that's around the time it started the whole DMCA. Because keep this in mind. It is now 2024, and people in 2000 just recently at that time made the DMCA, the Digital Millennial Copyright Act or something like that, was made in 2000. It is now 2024, and there's been no updates to it. So in 24 years, we've had the same laws in place. But imagine that, because like I said, it's a lifetime ago, 2000, 90s, whatever. What applies there does not apply here. And my God, eventually one day those are going to be updated. And it'll be interesting.
In the form of torrents, there is no denying that nothing gave us as much pleasure as a file getting downloaded back in the day, when a movie took about a few days to download. Not that we're saying that you should download anything from these places, but if you were inclined to do so in the 90s, LimeWire and a couple of other places were the only things that you could hope for. Number 1, film.
Oh yeah, look at that
Memories
camera.
are always a special way to remember something. And while selfies and camera phones...
Yeah, so nowadays, you can just take your phone out, take a selfie, take a picture, get a video, and it's all in high definition. So back in the day, you would have like these monster cameras. So think about when you watch the news and you see those big news cameras. Imagine half the size of that, and that's your regular phone, or not phone, but camera to videotape everything. So kids would have, let's say, plays and musicals. Parents would go there and they'd have to like have this on their shoulder and record it. And you would have to have a tape inside as well, like a VHS tape. You put that in there. Hopefully you got some batteries for that too, because it runs on batteries. Hopefully you got the right angle. And then if you're lucky and you got the really good camera, it's at like 344p. That's high resolution back in the day. And the other thing too is, let's say you record it, you bring it home, and you got it on there. Somebody could accidentally record over that too, which is absolutely mind-blowing. That, I'm so glad we don't have that nowadays.
Still do that. There was something extra special about the cameras of the 90s, which had to use film.
Yeah, they suck.
It was a painstakingly meticulous process to load the camera with the roll, and then each photo had to be just right because clicking...
Yeah, because the other thing too is, so when you have like the smaller cameras as well, and you're just taking like pictures or whatever, the way you would develop photos, so you would take the film that's inside of that and bring it to, let's say, a pharmacy or a place that does photos. You give it to the person, and sometimes it takes up to 24 hours, and you would pay for them to develop it. And you get an envelope with all your photos inside, but you also have to make sure there's nothing raunchy or risque on that film roll as well, because you can get banned from those places for that. And then eventually it went to 24 hours to, oh, we can develop it in 1 hour. And my God, I'm so glad that's not around as well.
away randomly cost money. Oh, and not to mention that once the pictures had been taken, you still had to wait for some time before you could see them, as they had to be developed first. Do you ever miss any of these awesome things from the 90s?
Oh, I miss a lot of them.
Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, go subscribe to Knowledge Window. Amazing stuff. I love their work. Strangest animals you did not know existed? The hell is that? That's a big mouth for a crocodile. Most amazing places to swim in the world? Damn. Oh, look at that. My Super Nintendo's up there. But yeah, I hope you guys like this. Coming down memory lane with me. It really unlocked a lot of memories for me. I love this. Hope you guys loved it too. So click that like, share the video, leave a comment below, hit subscribe. And as always, I love each and every one of you. Hope you're all safe, healthy, and happy. Peace and love.